welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of the Missouri State Penitentiary series of the most haunted places in Missouri right now. Thank you for watching the first one, and thank you for watching this one. This one's about the life inside the prison, how bad the gas chamber was, and different things like that. Also the paranormal activity and stuff such as that. Please like and hit subscribe to my channel if you want to continue seeing videos like this one. Just let me know what you think in the comments below. I do read them. Thank you so much. Let's get on into the video.
For my own tour. Now we will go on to what life was like at MSP for the prisoners. It was bad. It was really bad.
She was continuing to hurt. I tried everything. I massaged her legs, ice heat. At 3 a.m. she looked at me and she said,
sorry, this is where I had to go and find my file.
Really quick. I took my tour in early spring and the day was extremely wet, rainy, dreary, cold, just yucky all the way around. You've read up on some of the history on the MSP website, booked your tour, then took the drive to Jeff City, the old buildings, the history, our state capital. Then you pull up in front of the massive, dark, dreary, almost medieval-looking building surrounded by a massive limestone wall with guard towers. You can just imagine the guards standing in those towers with guns waiting for an inmate to try to escape or a fight or riot to break out. Some of the worst criminals were housed here, including serial killers and rapists. 168 years of prison history right here before your eyes. You don't know whether to be excited or overwhelmed or trepidatious or even sad. The whole place just looks foreboding. Well, of course it's supposed to, because it's a prison, not Disneyland. Well, I'm here to tell you that the things these men and women endured while behind these walls were gruesome, inhumane, nothing we could even imagine to this day. Imagine being thrown into the hole, the medieval dungeon underneath Housing Unit 4 or A-Hall. There's no light unless a guard brings you food, which is once a day, and it was only bread and water. You had to sleep on the floor, no bed, no cot, not even straw, cramped with sometimes up to 9 other people in pitch blackness. The cell itself was only about 5'5" with a domed ceiling. You got a bucket for your water and a bucket to do your business, and you better hope you know which one is which, or you're in even more despair than before.
Okay, let's talk about this look for a minute. I used a lot of sparkles. It actually, I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I'd like it. So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to keep going on this, and hopefully it comes up better. I'm going to clean up the lines a little bit and maybe do a little bit of a winged liner. I don't know. I'm not very good at that. So let's continue.
One man, John B. Firebug Johnson, spent 17 years down there, and after his multiple attempts of escape, plus multiple fires, including one that destroyed more than $500,000 worth of property damage and thus to several inmates, the warden was sick of his antics and threw him in the dungeon for the remainder of his sentence. After his release, he wrote a book titled Buried Alive for 18 Years in Missouri Penitentiary. The guard who did our tour said in the book, Firebug said he'd pull a button off his shirt if he was even lucky enough to have one and toss it in the darkness just to go search for it in order to stay sane. Then if you were in general population, you were still cramped into overcrowded cells, little food, stone floors, the same stone the buildings were made out of. For heating, there were stoves in the center, but because the prison doors were designed so small, very little heat went in. Sweltering summers, 1 bath a month, and every inmate got in line on bath day to share the same tub of water. You were lucky if you were one of the first ones in, but imagine being one of the last. The water, so dirty, nasty, cold, it's almost not worth bathing. Then having to work day in and day out in one of the many factories for almost nothing and quarreling rock, building more prison buildings and other big beautiful homes when most didn't even leave those walls. Then the guards could beat you anytime they liked, even for no reason, because they were in charge and they were better than you. Prisons are supposed to be there to correct the issues plaguing humanity and to discourage further bad behavior, right? Well, it wasn't always like that. It's suspected that more men and women likely died during their stay at the prison than there was ever recorded. One instance would be weather-related deaths. All the buildings were made from limestone, hot in the summer, cold in the winter. No utilities, no running water, nothing. This was the 1800s. The inmates worked all day, either in the bitter cold or the sweltering heat in the summer. The inmates were given paint to cover the windows to keep the hot sun out. Then in the winter, they peeled the paint off in order to heat the room with the sun. On top of that, they owned very little, and in the winter, everything they did own they put on just to stay warm. In the mid-1900s, an ice plant was built so the inmates could have access to almost unlimited supplies of ice during the hotter months, and staff went around making sure all the ice chests stayed full. Other reasons for deaths, especially ones that went unreported, were by guards or businessmen and so forth. They weren't reported because no one wanted to lose business deals with the state, since these businessmen were making a lot of money using inmate labor. Now on to what is called the Auburn system, created in New York and used countrywide. This is the system that they used at the prison at this time. This penal system was based on a belief that criminal habits were learned and reinforced by other criminals. The goal was to make life as unbearable as possible so they'd never want to return. Prisoners were not allowed to speak unless spoken to. Keeping them silent was a way to take the inmate's sense of self away, and when they lost that, many convicts obeyed the warden's wishes. They also had to keep their head and eyes down. If they didn't comply or tried to speak out, they were more than likely beaten, whipped, or flogged. They were put into tiny, cramped cells unable to move. The low, small cell doors forced prisoners to crouch, keeping them smaller and less powerful than the guards towering over them. During the day, the inmates worked at MSP. They worked in the quarry or built other prison buildings, homes, shoe factories, and so forth, then kept in solitary confinement the rest of the time. This was to instill good work habits and ideas of industry in hopes for rehabilitation. Then there was the state of the male death row that was located here until April of 1989. The death row inmates were held in cells below ground, isolated from all other inmates. They had lack of access to programs, no medical care, and so forth. They were only allowed out 1 hour a day for exercise. That was restricted to a small area attached to their unit surrounded by a fence. After the turn of the century, with controversy and legal embattlements ensuing, eventually the prison began to use an internal death row classification system. Privileges were rewarded for good behavior, medical care was improved, and a privacy room was created for the inmates who wished to seek counsel with their religious leader or such. This place was gruesome and brutal, basically up until the very end. You have to think, a prison that size and that old, it wasn't easy keeping up with modern conveniences and utilities, hence why it's no longer in operation. Now onto the gas chamber. The gas chamber is an apparatus for killing humans or other animals with gas, consisting of a sealed chamber into which a poisonous or asphyxiant gas is introduced. Poisonous agents used include hydrogen cyanide, carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide. Gas chambers have been used as a method of execution for condemned prisoners in the United States since the 1920s and continued to be legal until the 1990s. At MSP, it was a cyanide gas that was used for executions. By this method, the condemned was taken to the gas chamber and placed in the cell there if they chose to be given their last rites and last meal before the execution was to begin. There were also 2 viewing rooms in which witnesses could watch the whole execution. One side was for the inmate's family and such, and the other for, if it was a murder victim, the victim's family could come and view the execution. When the time came, the condemned was placed in one of the 2 chairs that had holes in the seat where the bucket of sulfuric acid was placed underneath. The inmate was strapped down with other straps. Once all that was done, the room was sealed tight. Even the door was from a World War II submarine to make it completely airtight. Side note, this started in 1937. World War II didn't even start until 1941. So where did the submarine door come from, and when was it actually placed into the gas chamber? I could not find that information. This was all the information that I could find on that door. Now, can you imagine being a witness to these executions? It truly was a horrible way to die, now considered very inhumane, which is why it's no longer used. The warden himself would pull the lever to release the sodium cyanide crystals into the pale mixture, which causes a chemical reaction releasing hydrogen cyanide gas into the room. Another side note, the Germans also used this to murder numerous Jews during the Holocaust as well, just in larger airtight rooms. This was used very frequently by a lot of different people. After the cyanide gas was in the room, the inmate was instructed to breathe in deeply to speed up the process, but most tried to struggle and hold their breath. The inmate basically dies from hypoxia, the cutting off of oxygen to the brain. The body reacts in different ways to this. They wouldn't lose consciousness immediately. They would turn purple sometimes. The eyes would pop. They'd often vomit and start to drool, and of course lose all bodily functions. I don't think there would be any way I could actually sit and watch a person go through that, no matter what crime they committed, that warranted the death penalty to begin with. A doctor described it as being extremely painful, like having a heart attack. After death was confirmed, the warden pulled another lever that opened an exhaust to suck all the poisonous air out of the chamber. The corpse was sprayed down with ammonia to neutralize any remaining traces of cyanide gas. They'd ruffle the body's hair on their head as well, then remove it from the chamber. Okay, when I visited this on my tour, there really aren't any words. So just imagine being taken from death row, which was held underground, walk to the building housing the gas chamber. You see the cross in the cobblestone walk on your way, placed in a cell right next to the chamber itself to speak to a preacher or priest. You're offered your last meal and you sit and wait to die. 38 men and 1 woman were executed this way. Some were double executions, like Bonnie Heady and Carl Austin Hall, which they kidnapped a little boy from his school, then shot to death and buried in Heady's backyard of her home in St. Joseph, Missouri. They had demanded a $600,000 ransom, which at the time was the largest ransom in the history of the nation. The family paid the ransom, not knowing the couple had already murdered their little boy. They were caught and condemned to death and executed in December of 1953. A lot of the inmates that were executed either committed murder or rape or even both. Back then, people didn't sit on death row for years and years like now. They were...
Okay, I'll be right back. Sorry about that. My dog just had an accident in the house, and I just threw all of my stuff on the floor by complete accident. We're almost done with the recording, and then I will come back and we will talk about it while I finish the rest of my makeup look.
Executed pretty quickly. I know we've come a long way in the justice system, and most states don't use the death penalty anymore either. The very last time the gas chamber was used was for a lethal injection in January of 1989 to George Tiny Mercer. He was convicted of rape and murder of a 22-year-old woman. Before this, the last lethal gas execution was in 1965. Now, we've talked about the history, the life, the gas chamber. This place was once called the bloodiest 47 acres in America. There were numerous deaths recorded and unrecorded. The treatment of the prisoners was barbaric and inhumane. And yes, I know prison isn't supposed to be a picnic, but the practices in this place even stripped men and women of just basic human rights, forcing them to work day in and day out for very little. Could even been described as slavery. All the while, Jefferson City and its businessmen grew richer and richer with the inmate labor they used. The homes built, including the governor's mansion. We never even got into how bad the segregation and racism was in this place. This place stood throughout almost our whole American history, saw the fall of the Alamo, the Civil War, both World Wars, civil rights movements, you name it. So in conclusion, they do offer tours, several different ones, history, photography, and even ghost tours, and investigations. Yes, this place is on the list for being one of the most haunted places in Missouri. Several paranormal groups have investigated there, some well-known like Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, and the guys from Ghost Asylum. There's lots of activity in this place. Full-bodied apparitions, EVPs, things getting moved, you can hear screaming, cell doors slamming, all of that. When I was there, we were in building 1, which is the main entrance, and it was the women's ward. We didn't get to tour that building, but I will very, very soon. The tour had just started, and the guard was just up there talking about everything we were going to go through on the tour and showing us a contraband collection they had. All of a sudden, we heard a cell door slam shut above us. There wasn't any other tour group upstairs at the time, and everybody else was down in this main room getting ready to go on the full tour. The guard didn't seem to be fazed by what had happened, but I had noticed that a couple of the younger people that were working there that were assisting with the tours seemed pretty shaken up by it. And at this point, we were the only tour group. Okay, we were the only tour group there. Just the feel of the whole place was dark and foreboding. A-Hall definitely creeped me out. It just felt like you were being watched from the dark cells and corners of this building. The dungeon cells were really bad for this feeling as well. They actually had all of us cram into a dungeon cell and turn all of the lights off just so we could see how bad it was. How dark. It was bad. So, anyway, welcome to my very first episode in this most haunted historical places in Missouri. And thank you so much.
That is the end of the recording. I am getting close to being done with this. Now, for kawaii makeup, they put the blush higher, more under the eyes. Everything is like centered around being very pink, very girly. I think I should have used something different. Let's try this one. Yeah, that's a little better. I'll blend it out. It'll be okay. But anyway, final thoughts on the Missouri State Penitentiary. Like I said, I did take a tour there. I was fascinated by the history, fascinated at the fact that I could actually tour something that was almost in my backyard. I only live about a couple hours from there, and super excited about going for the tour. What originally had gotten me excited was the fact that I had seen it featured on like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, and Ghost Asylum had been there. So I was more excited for the paranormal aspect of it. And then once I started delving into the history, it got me even more excited, because I absolutely love history. It was one of my best subjects in school. I loved it. For the brutality of the inmates, I was also reading, and I had watched a couple other another video done with a guard as like an advertisement for the tours about more of the Auburn system. It was basically when they had uncovered those underground cells, that because the doors being so little and the rooms being so small, he said in those cells alone, the inmates had to sleep on cracked earth. They didn't get blankets or anything like that. They just had straw to sleep on, if they were lucky to have that. They were just to make life extremely miserable, so people didn't want to come back. That was the whole reason for it. I gotta get my thoughts together here for a minute. I'll be right back. Oh, God. I am almost done with this. I'm going to put a little bit more sparkle on the cheeks. And then, okay, to also get into the segregation issues and the racism issues in the prison. As you know, the prison had seen so much history in the 168 years that it was around. There were a lot of black people in the prison. And when the states were calling for desegregation, they had put a group of black men in an all-white male building, and a fight broke out, and several of the white males had stabbed some of the black inmates, which it's all very sad to me. Anyway, give me just a couple more minutes. I'm almost done with this look. I just got to do the mascara, maybe a little eyeliner, which I can't do that on camera because, of course, I have to take my glasses off again and really focus on what I'm doing. I'll be right back, and then I will end the video. All right, I am almost done. Just some lipstick, and then we are finished. I have no idea what this is. Lip and cheek stain? It's not really showing up. And it's very orange. I'm not sure I like it. Hang on just a second. Let's see if I got some pink in here. Okay. Better. And I absolutely adore using lip gloss. I don't know why. I just do. And I love this lip gloss because it's also moisturizing. And the funny thing is, where I got it from was Dollar Tree. So, here's the look. I'm calling this the Pretty Pink Princess. And of course, I have a tiara to match. That won't stay on my head. But anyway, final thoughts on MSP. It was brutal. It was terrible. It was old. It was just, it was a mess. And it's now closed, which the money that they receive from their tours they use to keep the place going. They just finished the buried cells. They just finished getting those ready for tours, hopefully soon. Other than that, that is what I have. I hope you enjoyed this video today. And if you liked it, please hit subscribe and the like button. If you have any suggestions for future videos or anything else you would like to talk about, any questions you want to ask, go ahead and just leave me a comment. I do read all of them. So just let me know what you think. I hope everybody is staying safe out there and not getting sick. So far, I've been great. But anyway, hopefully I will get to upload these videos once a week. I'm hoping for that. The research takes me a while, and I do have another job that I go to. So anyway, I will try to do this once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, because like I said, my research takes a lot, and then I have to go through with the research, and then I type everything up into my own words, kind of like a script, and then I have to record that because I can't see while I'm doing my makeup. But anyway, if you like this video, please let me know. Please hit the subscribe button, and I will be seeing you guys next week. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, whatever it may be. I am sorry this is a little longer than I intended, but I hope it's a really good video. Thank y'all. Bye.